Good evening and welcome to Open Your Mind Radio. You have myself, Alan James.
And you have myself, Stephen George. Good evening.
Good evening. It's Sunday the 23rd of August 2015. So we had a 5-minute last minute panic on sorting out guests and connections and all that kind of stuff. So we're in the process of doing that. Steve's going to sort it out now, and we're going to be getting a guest on in a few minutes. Right, okay, that's great. Okay, we're just confirming connections with Scott, who's going to be a guest on tonight. Our guest is going to be Scott Tips. He's the president of the National Health Federation, and we're going to be talking to Scott up to about 8 o'clock. And then at 8 o'clock, we're going to get Karen and Tony on, who was on last week. We're going to do a part 2 with them, and we're going to catch up on a few things. So, a packed show, loads of information, and Steve's organising the guest at the moment. So, but it's been busy. So before we get in and start talking about things, I'd just like to say a big thank you to a few people during the week. Last week, you probably heard I had a cough, and I still have, but it's not as bad. And we got an email off a lady called Helen, who is a homeopath, and offered to send a cure up. Much appreciated, Helen. I know Steve's been in contact with Helen for other things as well. And my cough's a little bit better. It's still there, but it's getting there. Slowly but surely, it's disappearing. Also, a big thank you to Gary in the UK and David in Belgium. You know who you are. You know what you offered. Thanks a lot for that. Much, much appreciated. Again, you know, we're very humbled by the listeners that we have on the show, because it's just great people that we're meeting on the show and the things that they offer. Now that's I think that's our guest ringing in at the moment there, so Steve's going to deal with that. Let me just turn this down. So that's the thing. That's what's going on at the moment. Now we will go over to the communication channels in a minute, but Steve is just sorting that out at the moment with the guest. So I might as well go and start talking about the bits and pieces that we have at the moment. As I normally talk now, Disclosed TV, we're talking about the Tianjin explosion, which was waged as an act of kinetic retaliation by the Pentagon in response to China's currency war, the yuan devaluation, according to dissident sources from mainland China. The Chinese government has put in place unprecedented secrecy surrounding the mysterious explosion, and aggressive police state tactics are now being invoked to control the flow of information surrounding this event. Now, that was said on Disclosed TV, but I did contact Dr. Carol Roslin and asked her, and she said that it was disinformation. She said, if you actually look at the source where it came from, she said the website's full of adverts, and obviously, you know, it makes the money and everything else. So don't be too quick to actually think that was an inside job or the elites doing something. Now, as I say, I'm going to sit in the fence on that one. I don't know. I wasn't there. I wasn't involved. But I just thought I'd read that out. Now, before we go on, Steve, can you do communication channels and let us know what they are? Oh, sorry.
Thanks. It works better with the mic turned up.
It's going to be one of them shows.
Live radio. Yes. Okay, communication channels, please.
The communication channels are email info@oymireland.com, by phone 046 927 1212, and you can also contact us direct through the OYM chat room.
Yes, you can contact us through the OYM chat room. That is oymradio.com. You will see the chat room up there on the left hand side. You can log in there, and that's the fun place to be. That is the place to be. You can put questions up there on the site, on the chat room, for our guest this evening. We're also streaming live on peoplesinternetradio.com, the chat room on there as well. We're going to be monitoring both chat rooms for questions. We also have, as I say, the anti-social media application, that is Facebook. You can check us out on Facebook, because it's one of those unnecessary evils, you know. Nobody wants to be on it, but you have to be on it. But there we go. So we're on Facebook as well. You can check us out there. The link is up on the website, oymradio.com. It is on the left-hand side. You can just click on that. You can befriend us and find out all sorts of great information. We also, for your listening pleasure, are available on TuneIn Radio Link. That is a TuneIn Radio application. I think you can get it on iPhones, iDevices, smartphones, etc., etc. You can find us on that as well. Just pop that on your device, go into the search option, and you will see the the search box, obviously, type in OYM Radio and we will pop up, and you can check us out there as well. What else we got for you? We have YouTube, we have the channel up there, we have a lot of podcasts up there. We also have some video footage that we if we do have some video footage, we put it up there, and all sorts of weird and wonderful things, links, etc. And I think that's about it, is it? Yes. No, actually, I just mentioned as well, if you do log into the website, you will see on the left-hand side we have the OYM shop. The shop is open 24 hours a day for your viewing pleasure. So if you want to get a copy of a CD, we do promote the CD by Alan Carnett that is called Providence. Alan's a good friend of OYM here. We also have a book up there, How the Banks Are Screwing You and What You Can Do About It, by our friend Marcus McEwen. We have some stickers as well. If you don't have some stickers and you would like to have some stickers, just log in there. You can get five stickers for a £5. We've also got some T-shirts. I'm not sure what size. Is it small, medium or large we have left? I don't know, but there's a big array of them there as well, so you can grab your T-shirts. So there we go. And that's about it. I think Alan's finished typing.
Okay, thanks, Steve. It's just, things will settle down. It's just been busy. We're just bouncing from one side to the other. Right, okay, you're going to tell us about, we did have the Akashic Records read during the week on Tuesday. During the week on Tuesday with Angel Rose and, not Hanu, just Angel Rose, who are on the show. And Steve, well, you tell us your take on it. What do you think?
Yeah, well, again, it's one of these things where you have a little box in your head. Well, the men do anyway. Not sure about the ladies, but the men have a box in their head, and a box for everything seemingly. And the information that I got when I spoke with Angel Rose, again, we hooked up with Angel Rose and Ahanu when we done the Pain Genie course. They were actually on the Pain Genie course. A very, very nice couple. We had a chat with them, and we done the interview, as you're probably aware as well, with them a couple of weeks back. We hooked up on Tuesday, as I did anyway, and Alan did also, separately. And we spoke with Angel Rose, and she went into detail and read our Akashic records. Now, I know, before people start lambasting us on the chat room, we know that some people say you're messing with the occult and you shouldn't be doing this, and it's not good. But, at the end of the day, there was no spirits invoked or anything like that. It was all kind of above board. I like to think it was anyway. But I got a reading of my Akashic records. Again, was it mine? I don't know. Is it 100% genuine? Is it, can you rely on it? I do not know. However, I found it interesting hearing about my life, the direction where my life was going on this particular timeline. I also found it interesting about my previous lives. Again, did I have previous lives? I don't know. But Angel Rose talked to me about previous lives and basically who I was and what path I was on. When this was all kind of done and dusted, it lasted about maybe 35-40 minutes. She also sent over a recording of it as well. But just to kind of be kind of cheeky, I was already recording it anyway. And I let my wife listen to it, and she was amazed by this information. So she then asked me, would I ask Angel Rose to give her a reading, which I did, and she did. And she found the information fascinating as well. Again, put it in a box in my head with a question mark on it. It's not going to really influence me in any way, shape or form. It's just information. That's all I view it as. My wife, she didn't know what way to take it, and she said, well, what does this mean? I said, it doesn't mean anything. It's just information. Just treat it as such. Don't let what you were told shape the direction of where you're going, or any decisions that you were going to make. So that was fine. Alan got his done as well. I think in a previous life she told Alan he was a sex goddess or something. Sex god.
Yeah, I was Adonis. Yeah,
Adonis. Yeah.
I wish, yeah.
But that would explain what this lifetime.
Then she started laughing.
Yeah. I think I heard a Hanu laughing in the background too. But yeah, it's just information. I found it kind of interesting. I say, it's stuff that I don't know whether it's true. I don't know whether it's not true. Some people say you're messing with it. You're messing with forces that you shouldn't mess with. Some people say that the Akashic records, it's infiltrated, and any information that you do get is coming from an unreliable source. Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. I don't know. But it was just a bit of harmless. Well, I seen it as kind of harmless information. It's and that's the way I'm viewing it. But yeah, it was interesting.
Yeah,
Yeah.
excellent.
Yeah.
Okay.
Do you want to add to that, maybe?
Well, similar to you, basically it turned out previous lives I was kind of a freedom fighter, so nothing changes there.
True.
Just doing in previous lives, just getting into information out there and helping people in previous lives against the system. So obviously there's a pattern there somewhere that I'll be following. So let's hope this could be the last one, and the universe gets sorted. But we are conscious that we have our guest in the green room. So what we're going to do is Steve's just going to let us know about Mark next week, because Steve's going to be going solo, because I'm going to be up at Mark in the Old Castle hall, where Mark's going to be doing his platform work. But Steve, you can let us know about that. And what we'll do is with the Alan and Steve, we'll leave till the end of the show, so we have to get a guest on.
Yeah, okay, so we want to maximise the time. Just to mention, as I have mentioned already, anyone who is interested, international medium, spiritualist medium, Mark Impey, he's going to be in the Old Castle Spiritualist and the Spiritualist Centre on the 30th of August. That is next week. And it's going to be a night of mediumship with Mark. It's going to be great. The last time Mark was over, we hooked up with him beforehand. We done a pre-record so we could get the pre-record out for people who obviously couldn't make it to the show. So Mark is going to be doing a pre-record with us. He's also going to be on stage on the evening. It's going to be a kick-off time of around 7 p.m. And if you can make it, it will be fantastic. You won't be disappointed. Mark's he's a genuine nice guy, and there we go. So if you're free next Sunday evening, if you don't fancy listening to us, you fancy a night out, maybe with your loved one, but just pop along to the Old Castle Spiritualist Centre on the 30th of August.
Brilliant stuff.
Alan.
Okay, now we're going to get our guest on. Now our guest was on the show before, Scott Tipps, who's the president of the National Health Federation, and Scott and his team have been doing excellent work and supporting people like ourselves, representing people like ourselves, and fighting against the system over there. Steve's going to give us a breakdown just on a short bio of Scott, and then we'll bring Scott in, and then we'll find out what's been going on.
Okay, from the information we have here, Scott Tipps, he's editor of Health Freedom News. He's also president and legal counsel for the NHF. California licensed attorney, Scott Tipps has specialised in food and drug law and trademark law, but also engages in business litigation, general business law, and non-profit organisations with an international clientele. So, without any further ado, Scott Tipps. Good evening, Scott.
Good evening, Scott. How are you doing?
Good evening to all of you, gentlemen. I'm fine, thank you. I'm here in Los Angeles.
Oh, Los Angeles. What's the weather like over there at the moment?
Well, it's bright and sunny in your usual crappy paradise.
Crappy paradise? I don't know.
Sorry.
It's raining here.
It's raining. Scott, thanks a lot for coming on. We had a bit of a last minute thing going on there, just sorting out connections and stuff like that. Thanks for coming on. You've been on the show before, and we had a great chat last time regarding what's going on, and we're 2 years down the line, I think, since you've been on the show, and there's a hell of a lot going on with all the kind of pollution that's gone on with Fukushima and the poisons coming out. And I know you're doing a great job over there with your team representing people like us with what's going on. Can you kind of give us an update from what's been happening roughly over the last 2 years in a couple of sentences, if that's possible, and then let us know what you're doing now and what's planned?
Sure. We've had, in the last 2 years, we've had some victories on the vitamin and mineral supplement front, and then also in combating some of the attempts to contaminate and introduce toxins into our foods. We've had victories as well. Most recently, last July, just last month, when in Geneva, the U.S., in fact, most of the Western Hemispheric states wanted to reopen the recombinant bovine growth hormone issue and to allow the sale of those RBGH, as it's called, or RBST is the other acronym, milk products, dairy products, to be sold throughout the world. And we defeated it at Codex. The European Union, NHF, Russia, and some other countries joined with us, and Consumers International was another INGO, international non-governmental organization that actually did the footwork in stopping the U.S. bid to get us, to have us all subjected to this.
And obviously over there in the States, you're having this issue in California in particular, I believe, with the drought and the water and Nestle. And there's major issues over there. And there's obviously people finding radiation on the West Coast. They're doing readings. I've seen a video, a guy had a kind of miniature Geiger counter, and he was actually walking on the beach, and he was picking up radiation levels on the West Coast. But also with the droughts, and I mean, it's just we're hearing over there. We're hearing about it through obviously YouTube and stuff like that. And I don't know whether you're aware. I'm sure you probably heard about the Irish water issues that we have in Ireland, and they're trying to privatise it over here because water is the new gold. So, can you give us an update on what you've heard about that, and is there any other countries going through this as well?
It seems to be a global problem, you're right. And I'm not up on the Irish issue. I have to apologize for that. But I do know in the States it's becoming a huge issue, especially with the fracking contaminating so much groundwater. And then you have the drought issue as well. And, it all gets back to the water rights. We acquired... Here in the United States, we acquired the sort of the water law that was handed down to us by British colonialism, just as you did there in Ireland, and that affects our water rights. Now, in the western part of the U.S., they deal with water rights differently than in the more abundantly watered eastern part of the U.S., so they have different ways of dealing with it. But we have the same issues here as I gather you do there, in the sense that a lot of the water rights are being bought up.
Yeah.
A lot of the water rights that farmers have traditionally had to grow crops are not being honored. And a lot of people are short-sightedly and selfishly thinking, well, I just need it here in the city, and they aren't thinking ahead that there are crops to be grown, and there are foods, seeds to be planted, and the like. So it's a huge issue. And then the fact that some of these companies are selling their water to Chinese or other foreign companies and countries, it really just doesn't make sense. But in California, one of the big issues is just the burgeoning population. 98% of the population growth in California is due to immigration, both legal and illegal immigration. So they really need to rein this in. There are far too many immigrants, especially illegal immigrants, coming into the state. And this is straining the water resources in a way that was never really envisioned. If you ever saw the movie Elysium, that Matt Damon movie.
Yeah, I've seen that, yeah.
Yeah, not that great a movie, but it's great for one reason. If you see the first opening 10 or 15 minutes, you get an idea of what California is going to be like. In fact, most of the southwestern U.S. in the future. I mean, that really shows it. It'll look like Tijuana, Mexico, with everyone speaking Spanish just about, and just one big barrio after another, just slumland from here to the horizon, because they were letting in too many people, and we're letting in people who don't have our, too many to assimilate to our culture. So It's going to go to a different culture, and we already see this. And we see it happening in Europe as well. I spend a lot of time in Europe, France and elsewhere, and you just see it all over the place there. And before long, it's going to be... it's just not going to be the same. Ireland, the same thing. If you keep letting enough people in there, it's not that I'm anti-immigrant, but you have to have just enough to assimilate into your culture. If I lived in Ireland, I'd be probably one of the most pro-Irish people there, because I believe in preserving Irish culture. The same thing with French culture. Same thing with, it may be a misnomer here, but American culture. I don't know if there is such a thing. But in any event, we have to be very careful, or we're going to be, subsumed by a wave of immigrants who have no concept of what it is to live in a free country. And we will not have our freedoms, our protections, or any of that. And we've just got to wake up. There are a lot of these people who are not paying attention, and they think, I call them the "we are the world" people with quote marks around it. Let's all get along and live and let live. Well, that's fine, but their culture, the culture that's invading us, is going to overwhelm our own, and it then will not be "we are the world" anymore. It will be us submitting to their culture in our own land.
Yeah.
In our own lands. And we need to watch that, or we will not have not only health freedom, we won't have any freedom.
Well, that's the elite's plan of attack. They want to water down the nationalities. So, where there's, you'll have 25% of this and 25% of this in the next 2, 3, 4 generations of people. That's the plan. So there's no nationalities. So you won't be Irish or English or American or whatever. You're just going to be a mixed race of, all different races. And I know, that was mentioned. We have come across that. But also, I don't know, obviously you're aware of the eugenics program to depopulate the planet as well. And you're familiar with all the poisons in the food. What is there any new information that you have regarding foods that have been banned, any poisons coming out, or anything that we should be aware of? Because obviously over here in Ireland, even though they want us to pay for the water, which we already pay for, by the way. 1.2 billion we pay for in our taxes. We pay 2 or 3 times for this, and they want us to pay for it again. Our water is still fluoridated, so we have this neurotoxin in the water, which is obviously fluoride, and they want us to pay for that. So we're paying to kill ourselves. Obviously, there's probably other things going on in their food, or other chemicals in their food. GMO kind of taking a bit of a spurt as well in some countries in Europe. Do you have any news on that at the moment?
Yes, I do. Number one, I see it happening all over. Now, I'm not a huge believer in the depopulation theory. I think it's more in making us all infertile theory, and when I see at Codex and the like, haven't seen any smoking guns, but if you put all the concentric rings together of lowering our nutrient content in the food, eliminating a lot of supplements that would help you, and increasing contamination in food and our exposure to wireless and electromagnetic fields that are harmful to our health, then all those concentric rings add up to one thing, and that one thing is really reduced fertility, because through reduced fertility they can reduce the population in really a very quick order. There was a nice chart I saw once that showed, and I wish I had kept it, I don't know where it came from, but it showed that if they just reduce the fertility of the population, world population, by, actually it didn't take that much, I don't remember the percentage, but in about 10 to 20 years, the population of the world would be reduced dramatically. And it was amazing to see the figures, and that's what I see happening. I don't see that they're planning on killing us outright, although, I could be wrong, of course, and that could happen. But I see it where there are far too many people who are infertile, there are fewer kids, the kids are being killed off by over-vaccinations and the like. But with the fluoride, that's what they do. The Irish have always been somewhat rebellious and all of that. So, of course, you want to put fluoride in the Irish water to keep you guys and gals from being so obstreperous, going out and causing trouble and, against the world order. So they have to get people like you and the Americans and maybe even some of the Canadians on the west side of the country to have fluoride in their water to make them more docile. And they do that. And then in the foods, like at Codex, you see Ractopamine that's been introduced worldwide, or is being introduced worldwide thanks to the U.S. and Canada, actually Brazil and Argentina as well. And Ractopamine is that animal drug that is added to food to sort of, I call it the Arnold Schwarzenegger steroid-like drug that beefs up animals to make them more muscular and less fatty, and that adds some value at the marketplace to the animal. But the trade-off is that you and I consume this ractopamine residue, And it's not just that. What they do at Codex is they look at these effects in isolation. They just take ractopamine. They say, oh, humans can consume this much residue of ractopamine and they'll be fine. But what they're forgetting is we're getting all these other things. And no one's ever done a comprehensive review to see what the effect is of not only ractopamine, but PCBs, these xenoestrogens that are turning men into women, women into men, all these different aluminum, the chemtrails, the electromagnetic fields, the reduced nutrient content of our fruits and vegetables, all of these things working together are really affecting us adversely, and that's something they never test, that they never look at. But Codex, this world body that creates food standards for Ireland, for America, for Russia, for China, for India, and so on, 99% of the world's population, in its infinite wisdom, and that's a joke, but they deem that by looking at these things in isolation, they can determine whether or not they are healthy for us or not. But the fact is that a lot of their science is junk science. They are very heavily influenced by industry. In fact, when I go to these meetings, most of the INGOs, the international non-governmental organizations that are represented there, are trade industry groups. They have names like Crop Life. Sounds really nice, doesn't it? Crop Life. Well, that's Monsanto. They have names like the Calorie Control Council. That's the aspartame group. Then there's the World Sugar Research Organization. There's the International Council of Grocery Manufacturers Associations. There's the International Food Additives Council. All of these are just front groups for the industry, and all they care about is just, I hate to say it, because, making money. They don't care about the health of the consumer that much, just as long as they keep the consumer going long enough to buy their products. So the only ones there who are really fighting for us are the National Health Federation, because we're accredited, so we can speak out at these meetings. And we've actually, in the last 5 years, made a difference. We've knocked down the aluminum food additives. We stopped the RBGH, the recombinant bovine growth hormone that they inject into cows to give them, make them produce more milk. But again, it increases the antibiotic use in the cows, and you get it in dairy. Now, you're very lucky in Ireland. Antibiotic use is much less in Ireland than it is in America, but anyone consuming dairy products in America are going to get multiple levels of, compared to you, of antibiotic residue, which then in turn leads to antimicrobial resistance. And they call it AMR, antimicrobial resistance, which is a huge problem, because then when you get sick and you go in for medication to take care of your problem, the microbes are all resistant to whatever antibiotics they want to administer to you. This is a huge developing problem, and this is one that Codex acknowledges and is trying to deal with. Codex isn't a monolithically evil organization. There are a lot of actual good people in it. It's just that it's controlled by the ones who aren't so good. And so we get allies. And I have to, my hat's actually off to I'm not a huge fan of the European Union, as you know, back far from it. But the EU's Codex office in Brussels actually has been one of the toughest fighters at Codex to stop contaminants from going into your food there in the European Union. And I work with them closely. I know most of these people personally very, very well. And they were there with us, NHF, fighting to remove aluminum from food. They were there opposing ractopamine in animal feed. They were there last month fighting to keep RBGH, dairy products, contaminated dairy products from the EU. So they do actually do some good things.
Sorry, go ahead.
They do believe in what they're doing. They don't treat it as a 9-to-5 job. They actually get very emotionally wrapped up in it. And so you ought to be proud of at least that part of the EU, because they've been trying to protect protect all the citizens of the EU in that respect. They stink on vitamin and mineral supplements, but when it comes to contamination of food, they're actually quite sensible.
Yeah. Now, I mean, we spoke to Barry Trower regarding the environment that we're in and the wireless technology, and he released a report which said that the 57% of the females in the next generation will possibly be sterile because of it. Now, obviously, our food is being affected as well with poisons. And it's very hard, Scott, and I'm sure you've come across it, that, you know, myself and Steve are aware of the chemicals, as are most, if not all, of our listeners. They're aware of the aspartame and fluoride and all that. But trying to tell family and friends that there's poisons in our food, and you know, and there's a reason why they've been put in there, and you get a lot of the time you get the normal response of, oh, everything's bad for you, and technically, to be honest with you, a lot of things are, because we're not really eating food these days. So how do you go around? I mean, obviously, you being the president of the National Health Federation adds some credence to what you're saying. But how do you approach people to say about the poisons in the food and what's going on?
Well, that's an excellent question. You can lead a horse to water, but you can't make them drink, as the old saying goes. And so the best you can do is just point out the data. But you pointed out yourself a huge problem, because they either say, oh, everything's bad for you, or else they say, well, I trust the government. You know, the skeptics, the so-called skeptics, who really aren't skeptics, but they say, well, we want double-blind, placebo-controlled studies to show all of this. But then when you produce it, they don't believe it. So certain people have a mindset that it takes a lot to get around, because they've grown up with it, they have it, and it's tough. You can only get through to certain people on this, and if you're friends and family, it can be exceedingly tough. And to be honest, I don't really know the answer. It seems that some people will become awakened to it and see that they're hurting themselves. And what I have noticed is that usually the younger people either are already into it and are open to our ideas, or else they absolutely are not, because they feel almost, invulnerable and they're going to live forever. But as people get older and they see that certain nutrients can help them live a more comfortable life or avoid problems like mental decline, then I've found those people to be increasingly open to our ideas. And I guess the best thing is to go and just look at some of the studies, and if you have a friend who who has gotten better because of it, you introduce them at sort of the wedge approach. So one thing, they have an ache or a pain, usually like a joint issue, or their knees hurt, or they can't walk as far. Then you can use that as a wedge issue to show that by taking MSM, hyaluronic acid, methyl sulfonomethane, MSM, chondroitin sulfate, hyaluronic acid, vitamin D3, they can really help themselves, and vitamin C as well, of course. And people will notice an immediate enough improvement that then they'll be open to some of these other ideas. So I think it's more a wedge approach that might be best. Maybe that's not the issue. Maybe it's another issue. It could be they're interested in having healthier, prettier skin. So you talk to them about hyaluronic acid, increasing their magnesium uptake to get the calcium out of their skin. Calcium causes wrinkles in the skin. Magnesium and vitamin K2 help take it out of the skin. And so there are issues like that one can maybe address, personal health issues, and that will help. So I guess bottom line, it's a wedge approach, or the camel's nose in the tent, and then when they see that works, then they'll be more open to other things.
Yeah, it's amazing, but for some people, as I'm sure you've come across them, where they will complain of certain issues and you recommend it, or you might say, well, you're going to have to change your diet, or instead of eating that, you should eat this because that's going to help you. And they go, oh, but I really like eating that. And you think, well,
yeah, it's true. Well, we all do that. I mean, I have the occasional donut, I have to admit. I'm not a purist. I think there's a psychic benefit to certain foods, but, you can control things. Even with smoking, Dirk Pearson and Sandy Shaw, I don't know if you know those two individuals. They wrote the book Life Extension, The Practical Scientific Approach, which was a big bestseller when it came out in May 1982 here in the States on the New York Times bestseller list for many years. They're personal friends of mine, and they aren't believers in, shall we say, eliminating all bad habits, because they recognize people won't do that, such as smokers. So they tell people about how to minimize the effects of smoking, for, again, using that as an example. For instance, there was a huge study in, I think, the Detroit area of the U.S. where they had 10,000 men who were studied, half of whom were smokers, half were not. And the smokers who ate a medium-sized raw carrot a day had no greater an incidence of lung cancer than non-smokers. So they found that by eating a medium-sized raw carrot a day, they could eliminate the risk of lung cancer, not entirely, but largely. So Dirk Pearson and Sandy Shaw would tout in their books and their radio programs that this is what people should do. There's certain things you can do to minimize the ill effects of things. For example, another example, although this is not theirs, this is mine, fish. So we're worried about fish and the high mercury content, right?
Yeah.
But do people know that a lot of these same fish have high selenium content? Selenium and mercury have an affinity for one another like magnets. The mercury will attach to the selenium and be eliminated out of your system. So if you have an adequate selenium intake, the mercury content of the fish should not be a problem in most people.
Okay, what about Fukushima? What about people on the West Coast and
well, that's you, and you did mention that before, and I'm sorry I didn't address that, and I should have. It is a problem. You're absolutely right, and it's increasing as that gets over here more and more and concentrates more and more, and you're eating that. Now, realize that a small level of, and there's a name for it, and I'm sorry, I'm blocking, hormetic, has a small level of these things have a hormetic effect, Hormetic, hormesis. What that means is low levels of radiation actually strengthen the human body. It actually stimulates our cellular defenses to protect ourselves against larger doses of whatever the point. It's sort of like taking a little bit of arsenic, and it doesn't really kill you. It actually strengthens you in a way. Now, over time, it will overwhelm your system and kill you, of course, as they poisoned Napoleon on St. Helena, the British did, and got rid of him through gradual arsenic overdose. But anyway, the point being that through this hormetic effect, small doses of radiation actually make you stronger. But it's a J-shaped, or as they call it, a hockey-shaped curve, and at some point it overwhelms the system. So right now, as I understand it, and my information could be a little dated, so don't take this as gospel, but it's not overwhelmingly bad. It's probably just having a hormetic effect, but over time, this will worsen as you approach the hockey-shaped stick curve, part of the curve, and the part that slopes downwards, and then it'll start being very bad. There are things you can do to minimize it, like kelp, and a lot of these blue-green algae. There was a gentleman named, I forget his first name now, from Australia named Brown, who had invented a way or discovered a way to decontaminate soil that had been irradiated and supposedly would be uninhabitable for hundreds, if not thousands of years. He died, and with him, I think, died his secret. But this was only back in the 1990s that he lived, and he had a way to decontaminate radioactive soil and food products. Maybe someone knows what happened to his discovery. But in any event, there are ways through good levels of nutrition that you can protect yourself. That's why we've been fighting at Codex so much to keep the vitamin and mineral contents of not only our foods but our supplements high, And over the last 5 years, what has happened is we fought, as you may recall from maybe my last appearance on your program, that the NHF alone stopped them from dumbing down the nutrient reference values, what we would call the recommended daily allowance.
Yeah.
But in Codex parlance, they call them NRVs, nutrient reference value. They wanted to dumb down, for example, vitamin C from 60 milligrams a day down to 45 milligrams a day. Well, that's absurd. We need much more. They wanted to dumb down all the B vitamins except folic acid by 20%, 66%. They wanted to reduce vitamin A levels and vitamin E, and they wanted to lower magnesium and increase calcium, which is the exact opposite of what you should do. Well, in 2009, I argued on the floor of the Codex meeting for almost an hour against Australia and the other countries, and I was able to defeat them thanks to the help of India and, believe it or not, the delegation of Iraq, but who supported me. But if I hadn't spoken up at that time, it would have just sailed on through and we would have had these low levels. Now they are slowly but gradually over the last 5 years getting these levels adjusted. Now at the Bali, the Nutrition Committee meeting of Codex in Bali in Indonesia last November, Thanksgiving week, we were successful, not entirely successful, but we got 100 milligrams a day instead of 45 as the recommended daily allowance for vitamin C. So that was a victory. Even though we wanted 500 milligrams, we moved it in the right direction. And we had some other victories like that. But coming up this November in Germany, in the town of Bad Soden, there will be another meeting and they'll decide on vitamin D, on magnesium, on vitamin E, and some others. And these are ones that we will be fighting at that time. But to be honest, I'm not as hopeful at this meeting that we will succeed. We're trying to get the magnesium level up and the vitamin D level up and E as well, and we'll see what happens. But keep in mind that magnesium and calcium are twin minerals. They work together. When you and I were born, our skin, you know how smooth baby skin is.
Yeah.
Of the twin minerals, it was 95% magnesium, 5% calcium. And when we are 70 years old, it's the exact opposite. It's 95% calcium, 5% magnesium. Tap on a desktop, and that's what calcium is like in soft tissue. And you need magnesium, vitamin D, vitamin K2 to pull the calcium out of the soft tissue from your arteries where it blocks. Forget about cholesterol. It's calcification of arteries that causes heart attacks far more than cholesterol ever will. This combination of magnesium, adequate magnesium, K2, and vitamin D3 will pull the calcium out of your skin and out of your other soft tissue like your arteries and put it where it belongs in your bone and teeth. Typical Irish diet, typical Anglo-Saxon diet is very rich in calcium. You really don't need to supplement in calcium, but it's very deficient. 2/3 of Americans don't get an adequate amount of magnesium, and I rather suspect it's the same ratio in Ireland and in Great Britain. It'll be the same. Canada, the same thing. 2/3 are deficient in magnesium. You need magnesium. It's in muscle meats. It's in dark green leafy vegetables and the like. Nuts and seeds will have magnesium as well. But it's probably a good idea to supplement with magnesium, especially if you're a big dairy product consumer, because dairy products are soundly deficient in magnesium. But magnesium is incredibly important. It's what fires your heart muscles. You know, these marathon runners like Jim Fix, I don't know if you knew of him, but he was 50 years old, just gotten back home from running many miles, and he dropped dead on his doorstep.
Incredible.
Arteries clean as a whistle. But
Yeah.
I rather suspect it was because he'd sweated out all his magnesium and he couldn't fire his heart muscles anymore, and he just died.
I've heard a couple of cases of that happening. Very fit people, just getting a stroke or a heart attack and dying. We do talk about magnesium and how important it is, and we have mentioned before something that myself and Steve have is Celtic sea salt, which is full of magnesium, and you just put it in your food and your dinner and what have you, and take it, and it's brilliant for people that are suffering from like arthritis and stuff like that, because obviously that's what the body draws on. But I'll tell you what we're going to do, Scott. We have a few questions coming in, and I know we have probably about another 25 minutes there. So I'm going to pass you over to Steve. Steve's going to quick fire the questions over to you from our listeners. Okay. Steve.
Yeah, Scott, I've got several questions here. I'm going to ask them in no particular order, so please excuse them because we may be jumping around the place a little bit. But the first question is from Karen. Karen is wondering, why is the radiation in Japan measured in NSV/H? I think that's convert nanosievert per hour or something like that. And in the US, she says it's CPM or counts per minute.
I think it's just convention, and the Japanese way is better. The American way is more old-fashioned, which kind of fits with the research that was done during the Second World War by the British and the Americans to develop the atomic bomb. So they just look at your total count and see if you're getting excessive radiation. But the Japanese way is the more modern way of doing it, is my understanding. I'm not an expert on this. Actually, I think the questioner probably knows more about this than I do, but that's just my understanding.
Excuse me, just speaking of radiation, something I came across today, actually, on eBay. Again, I don't know how good these devices are, but there's someone done a demonstration on a cheap radiation counter, and they had one of the energy saving light bulbs, and they had this cheap counter. I think you can buy them for under $20. You can buy very expensive ones as well, but they had this radiation counter, and they held it up close to one of these energy saving light bulbs, and they actually measured the amount of radiation coming off it, and a warning light went off, and it was saying like danger. I think they put it up then to the likes of an LED or an incandescent bulb, and there was no such warning light going off. So I'm just throwing that in there just in case people are interested in maybe looking into this, because we have mentioned before about the radiation and the mercury and the CFL bulbs. Anyway, that's just kind of a little side note. John has a question, Scott. He's wondering, how much vitamin C can you safely take per day without organ damage, if any? At the moment, John is taking 1,000 milligrams vitamin C per day.
Oh, that's an easy question. You could probably die of water poisoning before you end up dying of vitamin C poisoning. It's actually a question that could take up all the rest of our time, but let me give the cut to the chase and just say the best thing to do with vitamin C, because there's a half-life of 2 to 4 hours for that in your system. So you want to take divided doses. If you're taking 1,000 milligrams a day at one time, you need to really try to take it in divided doses. It's far better to take 500 milligrams a day at different times than it is to take 1,000 in one fell swoop. Now, in terms of the amount, keep in mind that humans lost the ability to manufacture vitamin C from sugar millennia ago, and in doing so, if you went back in time and went to our human ancestors who had that genetic ability, and you compared them to animals today other mammals, who can produce vitamin C, you can do a little chart, and you look at the chart, say a mouse or a shrew at the far left, the small one, and then you have say a cat, and then a dog, and then a horse, and a giraffe, and an elephant. You can do a scale, and it's almost a straight line scale going up from bottom left to upper right, and you have you can then plug a human into that. Just put him there between the horse and the dog, and then by body weight, say 170 pounds, and you draw a line up to that sort of 45-degree horizontal, not quite horizontal, angled line, and then draw across from that to the amount of vitamin C produced per day. And for humans, it'd come to 10,000 milligrams a day. So that is the amount that if we still had the genetic ability to produce it 24/7, we'd be making 10,000 milligrams a day. So it's very hard to overdose on vitamin C. And by the way, you don't have to buy an expensive vitamin C. Even Linus Pauling said, what's the point of buying this vitamin C that's so more easily absorbed, because it's already 97% plus absorbed in the human as ascorbic acid. You don't need the fancy ester C or whatever that will be more readily absorbed. But in any event, I would say if it were me, I would take at least 500 milligrams 3 times a day, bottom line, and that would give 1,500 a day, and that's a pretty good start. But try to do it in divided doses. That's the key.
I think that makes perfect sense. And as you say, ascorbic acid, that's one that was recommended to us here several times. That, as you say, you don't have to go for the fancy brand, but ascorbic acid is vitamin C in its truest form, and I think that's available at most health food stores anyway. Well, the last time I checked, it was anyway.
Oh, can I add something to that? You just
absolutely.
And I do not recommend time release vitamin C, because what happens is that tablet that is time release passes through your acidic environment stomach, goes into the intestinal tract where it's alkaline, and here's a very acidic tablet sitting in your intestinal tract, slowly dissolving in this alkaline environment. It can, in some cases, I don't know if this has actually happened, but it has the potential to burn a hole in your intestinal lining there because it's so acidic. So I do not recommend time release.
Okay, so I mean, guessing something that would be mixed with water, soluble, would probably be the way to go, would it?
Yes.
Okay. Moving on from that, we have a question from Bill. Bill is wondering, as you spoke of, or as we spoke of at the top of the show, the likes of chemtrails. Chemtrails would you be fair to say that would be mass vaccination?
Well, that's an interesting thing. I have heard some people mention that, but I hadn't thought about it in a while. Dane Wigington, of course, is our resident expert at NHF, and we just had an article in Health Freedom News in the last issue that was hugely popular that Dane Wigington wrote. And I'm trying to honestly remember what his position is on it, because he knows so much more about it than I do. But I myself don't look at it as mass vaccination. I just look at it as mass poisoning.
Yeah. Because
of the high content of barium, aluminum, or as you would say, aluminium, that comes down from that. But there are, also reported viruses and bacteria that are included in that. Now, that's been less explored because so many people have been focusing on the contaminant effect of it. So, bottom line, I don't think I have enough information on it to point to that. I think the huger damage is from the boron and aluminium that comes out as the fallout from that, plus some of the other contaminants that are in there. I think that's the bigger danger.
Yeah, I think we can probably safely say that we don't really know what they're capable of putting in that. They can put anything they like, I suppose.
You're right, and I think it changes over time too. It's sort of like the chef of the day says, "Well, let's try this on the guinea pigs down below, see what happens."
Yeah,
and they do, and sometimes it works, sometimes it doesn't. But the thing is, this has just got to stop. Whatever they're spraying has got to stop, and it's killing us. And either they're terraforming the planet for some other, life, or really, it's not really terraforming. It's really like xenoforming for some other species, I don't know, or for some superhuman species, but they're probably trying to get rid of all the useless feeders. Now, this may be an example of depopulation and not just reducing fertility, but I think it's also reducing fertility as well.
Yeah, and I think from what we've seen, from one of the chaps we had on this show there a while back, Michael Murphy, he done the what in the world are they spraying? He done a great documentary. I'm guessing you've probably seen that.
Yes.
Where he says because of the mercury that's falling from these chemtrails, it is getting into the soil, it's affecting all the food, and it's affecting vegetation across the planet.
Yeah, it absolutely is. You see a lot of forests very negatively affected, and also it's been affecting the drought in California as well. But when you see aluminum levels in the west coast of the U.S. that are, 11,000 times higher than normal, then it makes you really wonder. I mean, actually, to be honest, that more than anything was the thing that convinced me that it's a huge problem and that it was real. I mean, I always thought it was real, but the thing that really put the lead in the pencil were these high levels of contamination in the soil. Where are they coming from? They aren't coming from factories. They're coming from the spraying in the sky. And there was a gentleman named Peter Varecki who had the Belfort group in Ghent, Belgium, and they would put on a lot of events where there were speakers, one of whom was Michael Murphy, and I met him at one event there when I was speaking some years back. And Peter Varecki, though, had this very nice approach. Anytime he saw a chemtrail in the sky, he went and filed a police report with the police department against it. He got to be quite a nuisance doing that because it happened quite often over Ghent, Belgium, of course, as it happens over all these major Western European cities. And in any event, he was not popular. I don't know that it really got him anywhere, but his point was if everyone did this, then maybe we'd make a dent.
Do you know what? I'd like to believe that, but from what we've seen over here in Ireland a couple of years back, there was a day or a weekend when it was particularly bad with chemtrails, and a lot of people actually got together and they rang up the Weather Bureau, Met Éireann as it's known over here, and they actually made a statement on the evening news. Well, after the evening news, they done the weather forecast, and the lady doing the weather forecast, she said, we've had some interest in people talking about the contrails, the condensation trails, and you could see by her face, she was lying and everyone knew it, but she kind of gave a spin as to it's condensation trails. It's just the low flying aircraft, and she gave some technical jargon about the, high altitude, low altitude, and she mixed it all up. So anyone who didn't know their stuff listening would have went, oh, okay, yeah, that sounds plausible. But
right. Yeah, they're so good. That's why they're so good at passing this off as something that's normal. That's why I really respect your listeners for listening to your program, because if they want to get the real news and to think, and really your OYM says it in spades, and that is open your mind, then they've got to listen to programs like yours. So that my hat is off to you and to all of you and to your listeners for having an open enough mind to hear the real truth, the real views, and really what's going on.
Yeah, okay, well, and our hat is firmly off to you as well, Scott, because we can only do so much. You're the man on the ground, so to speak. I mean, you have the clout being who you are, and, because you represent the NHF, you can actually go to the likes of these meetings, have a say and make changes, or at least educate people into making the right decisions where, we wouldn't even get it past the gate on any of those meetings. So, I mean, hats off to you as well. At the end of the day, we're doing important work, yes, but I think you're doing more important work than what we're doing.
Yeah, well, thank you very much. It's not easy, and it's a thankless job many times. I got into huge fights with the Codex chairwoman at the meeting in Geneva in July, because at one point she wouldn't even recognize me to speak because they didn't like what we had to say. And the US FDA actually threatened my colleague, Robert Cohen, with a lawsuit because of things he said against the FDA. It was very contentious meeting, and we took a lot of heat because of it.
It's incredible that these people, are they just naive and unaware what they're doing, or is it the padded envelope that keeps their mouth shut?
I think it's kind of both, and it depends on the person. Sometimes I think there's a herd mentality in effect there, and a lot of the Codex members, they genuflect at the altar of the orthodox Codex scientific body called JEGFA, the Joint Expert Consultation group on food additives. Is called JEGFA, and whatever JEGFA determines whether, they'll determine whether something's safe or not. If they say it's safe, then you can count on a majority of the people, the delegates at a Codex meeting, just accepting that, regardless of whether it's true or not. I mean, regardless of the truth of it on the face of it. And so it's like Moses coming down from the mount with the tablets of stone, and they just automatically accept it. It's chiseled in stone, and so that's the way it is. And that's what we fight against. And what we've found is a lot of that science is really junk science. It's either based on inaccurate science, industry science that's very one-sided, or, not that government science is not one-sided, by the way, so don't fall into the mistake of thinking government science is any better. It's not. Sometimes it's actually worse. But you take these things with a grain of salt, and also we just see that there's industry influence in the outcome, and we think that's what happened with the RBGH. It's all, Monsanto and Elanco and those sort of people who have influenced it. So, in any event,
I'd like to think that we are waking up a lot of people, and people are beginning to realise, especially from a food point of view. I think I've seen more food, even in the local shops. There's food out there, the gluten-free food, and the different kind of the breads, and just food in general. There are changes going on, as I say, even from a local point of view. And the more we actually educate people regarding the aspartames and the MSG and all that, and the fluoride in the water, it's just trying to get through to the people that, and I'm sure we've all been there. We're telling people about the dangers of this certain chemicals in certain food and certain drinks, and they're going, "Oh yeah, that's very interesting," while they're still pouring these drinks and eating the food at the same time. And you think, what are you not getting that we're trying to tell you? Especially if they have children, and you think you're buying these cheapy drinks from. I mean, we have, you probably know Aldi and Lidl are food suppliers, a food chain over here in Ireland. And if you go through the majority of their drinks, you can guarantee that they're all full of aspartame. Yes. And you say to people that, yes, they are cheap, but there's just poisons in them, and there are certain chemicals that you have to stay away from. And they're going, "Oh, that's interesting." And the Diet Cokes and stuff, and yet they're still going and buying them. And you just think, okay, I'm just wasting my time. They're just not at that time. They're not ready to accept the information, because they still have this belief that the government love them and they take care of them and they'll never do anything to harm them whatsoever.
Yeah, well, people need to be more aware of what they eat, and I think they will be, and of what they drink as well. The science of epigenetics is becoming increasingly well known and well understood. And there are certain things that you can eat or drink that will either turn your genes on or they'll turn them off. It depends. For example, resveratrol. Resveratrol, taking it up to 100 milligrams a day. You don't want to take more. Again, this is that hormetic effect that I was talking about. It sort of stimulates your immune system, resveratrol does, in a funny way. And in doing so, it makes you stronger. But what it also does is it will turn your genetic switches. Some need to be turned on to be in a more youthful state, and some need to be turned off. And I don't want this to turn into an advertisement, but the one particular one I take is called Longevinex. Longevinex.com is the website. Longevinex, because it has some cofactors like quercetin, IP6, transferulic acid, some other ingredients that all work sort of synergistically together. And I personally saw the study that had been done by them at the University of Wisconsin in Madison, where it actually turned the genes on in a more youthful state, far better than just plain resveratrol. I mean, it was like significantly better. I don't remember the percentage, or I'd say it. But the point is that people need to take certain nutrients, not only to get a proper nutrient pool in their body, and but to turn their genes on or off in a way that's more youthful and more healthful. It's useful to think of the nutrient needs of the body as a pooling effect. There are many different pools. So what the government does and what a lot of industry does is they look at the first pool. Imagine a swimming pool or a little, pond, and it gets filled up, and that's what keeps you alive for the next few hours or even the next few days. But to have optimal nutrition, you need to have that pool overflow to the next pool that keeps you from getting cancer and dying in 20 years or 10 years, or from having that heart attack and dying in 5 years. And that pool needs to be filled up. And then if that's adequately filled, then it goes to the least, the least pressing need of nutrition, and that's to make your hair shiny and long and keep your skin in a healthy state and all of that. That's sort of the tertiary pool. So there's a pooling effect, and you want it to overflow. And what the government and industry does a lot with their nutrient reference values and all of that is they just look at filling up that first pool. What keeps you striding along one step at a time and just barely out of the grave. That's their idea. But what's going to be optimal is to overflow that pool to the next pool and even beyond to the third pool, so that you don't get cancer in 20 years, so that you have really healthy skin and hair and your eyes shine and all of that. That's what we're looking at, and that's what a lot of people, myself included, just call optimal health.
Yeah.
And at Codex, that's what we have been pushing, is optimal health, and that's what we argue, is it's not about keeping you out of the grave today. It's about keeping you in the most healthful state that you can be, resistant to disease and to stress and to negative impacts over your entire lifetime. Some people, you say, a lot of people say when I talk about this, many, I shouldn't say a lot, but enough, say, I don't want to just live gray-haired and feeble for an extra 20 years. What's that? What's the good of that? But that's not it. It's about improving those middle years, lengthening those middle and younger years, so that you, when you are 60, 70, 80, you're like a 45-year-old, and that is entirely possible with what we have today.
Yeah, I think we could do that. I think we do have the information and the knowledge and the products to do that. We just have to be aware of them. Scott, we've reached that time, so it's been brilliant to have you on. I think we're going to have to pencil in another interview, and we'll carry on from there. But thanks again for coming on the show. Much appreciated. Loads to do, and we appreciate all the work that you do with the National Health Federation over in Europe and standing up for the people like us. It is really much appreciated. I'm going to pass you over to Steve. Steve's going to get all your details off you so people know where to get you. Steve.
Yeah, Scott, I actually do have more questions that we didn't get to ask, so what I'm actually going to do is...
ask them. I have some time if you want, but if you don't have time, I understand.
No, I think just because of time, that there is actually someone else. I think there's another guest waiting to come on, so we're just kind of... What I will do actually is I'm going to forward you on these questions over via Skype, and maybe if you could at some point in time, maybe if you could just drop us a quick answer on them, that would be fantastic, and then we can maybe read them out next week if that's at all possible. But in the meantime, Scott, how can people find out more about the NHF and Scott Tips?
Well, thank you for asking. Go to our website. It was under attack by some aggressive spammers, so we're still putting it together. So I apologize in advance for it. But go to www.thenhf.com. thenhf.com. So we couldn't get just simply our initials, nhf.com, so we put the word "the" in front of it. So it's thenhf.com. You can go to our Facebook page. Just look up National Health Federation. We have different Facebook pages: Ireland, UK, Sweden, Those are some of the more active ones, but our main one, the National Health Federation, and sign up there. There's also an NHF group, so not to be confused with our Facebook page. And we actually have a Twitter account, but someone's grabbed hold of it. And we can't get the password back. We've actually been under attack lately by some people who don't like our success. So we're having to fight some battles on other fronts than just Codex and domestically. But go to thenhf.com. If you want to write me, you can write me at SCT, my initials, at thenhf.com. And I'll try to get to your questions. I get, 1,000 emails a day at least, so forgive me if I don't answer right away. But anyway, thank you, and we appreciate anyone who can donate, because we don't get government money or big corporate money to go to these things, and they cost money. And or join as a member. It's not that expensive, and we actually have good local groups. We had a very active group in Ireland, but it's kind of gone missing of late. But the UK group is active. The Sweden group is super active. And we invite you to get involved with us.
Brilliant stuff. That's great, Scott. Okay, Scott, just stay with us there for a few minutes. We're just going to go off to a musical break, and we'll be back after this.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com, and PeoplesInternetRadio.com.
And we're back. That was just a little bit of Billy Idol there for the break, Sweet 16, from Alan's 45 record collection. And great information there from Scott Tips. And as Scott said, and I posted up there, you can check him out on thenhf.com. And also, Scott was kind enough to give us the email address there, which I did post up, and I will post up again. So if anybody wants to contact Scott, you can join the queue and fire him off an email. But do be prepared for a bit of a wait. As he said, he does get about 1,000 emails a day.
We will get him on again, and we'll do a full interview with Scott. But for now, if you remember last week, we had Karen and Tony on, and we had loads of emails in from people saying that how much they enjoyed the show and the information. So we said, right, okay, what we'll do is we'll do a quick 30-minute interview with Karen and Tony tonight after Scott, and just get an update of what's going on now and in the foreseeable future, or what they think is going on. And it's only going to be a quick interview, but it'd be good to kind of find out from what their thoughts are. So good evening, Karen and Tony. How are you doing?
Good evening. Fine.
I'm excited. How are you?
Yeah, not too bad. I'm quite excited too, most of the time anyway.
Very excitable he is.
Very excitable. So, we had a great interview last week, loads of information, great feedback from our listeners. And what we're going to try and focus on now is what's happening now and what's coming down the line. So, do you want to kind of give us your thoughts on what you've heard? Karen, starting off with you, Karen, then we'll go off to Tony, and give us an idea. In the time we have about 30 minutes or so, so we'll try and kind of cover it in that time, if we can.
Okay, well, thank you very much. There's a lot. As you know, you're on social media like I am, following Skype and following Facebook. There is an awful lot that's being disseminated. I have many friends we were talking with Miles Johnson, to different people like Randy Kramer, Patty Broussard, and other people that were involved in the secret space program and other things along that line, to do with the pole shift and what we see. I do want to let people know that in Medicine Hat here, we are probably about 3 hours south of Calgary, which apparently is in a pole shift of their own. They're having lots of snow there, so I'm a little sad that I missed Nassim Harriman and the Modern Tour crew. However, it's absolutely gorgeous here, and what we have seen is actually the other planets. And so we've been able to see that very clearly and distinctly, and we've also been able to see those pillars of light.
Okay, so you've seen, so just to clarify, the pillars of light have been seen all around the world. People can go on the internet, go Google it. All these pillars of light have been seen. And you have photographed, because there are people saying that Planet X isn't going to come in, and other people are saying, like Dr. Simon Atkins, who we're going to have on, it's a wave, it's not a planet. And you saying you've physically taken a photo of Planet X.
Actually, what we've done is we had a pillar of light that we're able to determine something was going on. We posted up on my Facebook about 3 weeks ago. We also had it posted with one called Medicine Hat actually there. And the other thing too we've been able to see is different spheres here, very much like a indigo purple kind of a mauvey hot pink. So we've been able to see different things from this particular part of the hemisphere anyway. And what I did want to bring to the attention is that on Patty L. Brassard's or Amanda's brackets or my particular albums, we've got an awful lot of information that we've accumulated and stored, which is why I'll be doing the basis program this week with Miles Johnston, and I've been talking, like I said, with Captain Randy Kramer. We're quite aware, and if you go back to whether Revelations or the Hopi Mayan prophecies, this has been things that we've been able to notice. And so when I can see it, it's not a belief. I've seen it, I've experienced it, this part here. One of the things is it is supposed to be the best time for those people that are in a place of peace. And like the 23rd and the whole Shimta and the Blood Moon Tetrat, this is a time of vibration and of atonement. And so those people that are in the high vibrations are doing healthier in natural law, we're going to have the best times ever, which is why we're actually prepping here. This area was actually known to be high enough up and never touched, almost like its own little island oasis in the middle of an ice age or a pole shift. And so we are starting to see dramatic changes. I think there isn't anyone that can't tell the difference what the moon is doing, where things are lining up. A lot of people like Bassam on my Facebook can see actually 2-3 planets lining up. It's very clear if you're in different places around the world. So I would encourage people to look up Nibiru, Planet X, Her Columbus, call it whatever we want. There's something changing. On the 23rd, we're going to be right about here, because I know Tony's due to come back, so I'm actually planning parties for him to introduce him to the locals here. And so that whole time for me is a time of celebration. We haven't seen each other yet face to face for about 3 years. So to me, I'm in a celebration mode. And so that's what that's all about. What's going to happen the 23rd, why don't we all have a call on the 23rd and I'll let you know better what's happening over here. But you're invited to come in. We'll Skype you into the party. So we're going to start probably on the weekend, the 20th, having celebrations. There will be drumming going on. There will be dancing. There will be music. Lots of raw chocolate, things like that, and we're going to have some superfood. So we're actually planning parties here to welcome in whatever's coming in.
Right, okay. Tony, is this disinformation, Tony? Is this another rouge by the elites that September's going to come and go and nothing's going to happen, a bit like 2012, bit of a kind of false flag to a certain extent? Now, I know a lot of there are people saying, look, 2012, nothing's going to happen. It's all kind of PR and marketing and everything else, and it's not the end of the world and all that kind of stuff. Is this September going to be another case of that?
I think it's really important for people to realize that the reality that we experience as objective reality is not objective at all. It's a subjective reality that's broadcasted by your mind, and then you experience yourself being within the reality. So we're actually in a war for the mind, and all the propaganda and the prognostications of what's coming down and who's doing it, whether it's the Illuminati or the secret government that's representing the Illuminati or our governments, etc. This is all designed to attune your consciousness to the frequency that serves their particular agenda. But each and every one of us have the opportunity to ask ourselves, is what I believe really true? And whenever we're experiencing something that we don't prefer, that doesn't feel comfortable for us, what am I thinking right now? What must I believe to be thinking this? And whatever that belief is, it's outside the frequency that I call excitement, which is the frequency that supports you in the reality that you prefer to experience. So just turn the belief around to its opposite using positive language, commit to that being your new belief, and commit to thinking only consistently with that belief and start acting like someone who really believes it. Because we are all only always going to experience the collective consciousness. Okay, so each and every one of us have the opportunity to decide for ourselves, are we going to be part of the problem or are we going to be part of the solution? Now, like Karen, I get a lot of information. I have a friend who's a lay consultant to a consortium of 300 prominent scientists around the world. And they said over the next 2 years, a lot of stuff is coming down. and they don't know exactly what, and they don't know exactly when, but they've got evidence that nature is doing some things that it hasn't done in a long time to rebalance herself. There's also talk of many asteroids coming this way. Much of that information is not passed on to us through NASA. Karen and I both heard through Patty Bouchard that the live feed from NASA is not live at all. It's actually recapitulated photos from years ago because there's so much going on in space. I've heard information about wars going on in space, but I wasn't there. I didn't see it myself, so I can't really confirm or deny. Then you've got the whole thing about CERN and possibly opening up an interdimensional portal that allows interdimensional beings in, which will serve the agenda of the elite that want to control and exploit the planet. We're all familiar with Agenda 21 and the plan to bring humanity into balance with nature by reducing the population to 500 million, which is, absolutely a totally absurd intention. And I've got a friend, Dr. Cornelius Van Dorp, who's written, quite a few books, the Crystal Mission and the Search for the Serpent, etc. And he's got an interesting theory, which I find entertaining and I actually find it encouraging. He believes that since we're all part of the consciousness of the planet, that the consciousness of the planet, in order to come into full activation, requires a certain number of human beings. And he believes that that's why there's so many human beings on the planet at this time. And he thinks we're closely reaching that critical number of beings where the planet becomes fully conscious. So if that's an idea that excites you, get behind it. So I'm encouraging everyone to support the ideas that you find exciting and don't put any energy into the ideas that you don't find exciting. And realistically, I don't know anyone, Karen may, but I do not know anyone who knows definitively what's coming down and through what agencies they're coming down. I mean, we hear about Operation Maple Leaf in Canada. We hear about Operation Jade Helm in the United States and what that's all about, so I won't go into details on that. But again, this is just information that's flying around, and if it doesn't resonate with you, if it's not something that you would find exciting, then don't put your energy behind that. Put your energy behind visualizing the highest and best reality that you can imagine, and start eliminating the beliefs that would have you support another vision of what's coming down in our future.
Okay, well, it's a question for Karen. Karen, we now and again we get emails in from people and they say, oh, that's kind of fear porn. Now, we always say to these people, well, if that's where your mind is at, well, then it is fear porn. We just see it as information. And Karen, you post an awful lot of great stuff up on Facebook. I'll have to give you that. I don't know where you have the time to do that and everything else that you do. But some of that information for people in the mindset might say it as fear porn. And so what's your take on that? What way do you perceive it, or what would you advise them?
Well, as you just know, and along there, I just gave you some links as well, just directly as we're talking here. You sometimes can deal with one individual, which again, you're out disseminating as we are with our radio stations as well and Facebook. But that is not actually fear porn. I think, when people have not done their investigations, it is information. It resonates in the field, and it's what we experience. And so when looking at specific, let's say, radiation counts, that I'm dealing with Patty, and she's got, a specific counter there, and I'm looking at the counts per minute, and they're over 334. And then I move into the Detroit area, and it's over 9,000 for the gamma, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and there's 10 different fields of gamma. I can actually see that. So I prefer to deal with people that have this extra information and disseminate it out so people can make informed decisions. And again, that comes into whether health. People assume that what's in the grocery store is healthy for them, and they're not able to read or make their own investigation. This is why it is great that I have extra friends that have extra military intelligence, because I have the gift of discernment as well. And so it's not fear porn. Fear is when you move into the information and you cannot make an informed decision, or you're frozen, or you're stuck. However, if you look at it as an opportunity to expand your awareness, based on the information I have, I'm in one of the safest spots. I looked at the elevation of where this was. I've talked to the elders. I've, as a clan mother, got extra information that we posted, and that's why I use Facebook. But in every particular pole shift or time of transition or migration or the Great Journey, and we call it Noah's Ark Treaty or Noah's Ark Covenant, that the covenant people or the people that were adhering to the Creator's laws or universal natural laws would be given the information and would be protected. And so I'm going to be in that particular group, and I'll lead it if we have to. So that's part of the information, too, that's on Tribal Laws Meredith Quinn, and those have been passed down orally, but actually in stone. That's what the obelisks were about, and the Cleopatra needle, which is in New York City. Those specific covenants, treaties, hieroglyphics have been passed down, and for those that have been educated and not ignoring the laws, are quite at a time of peace. And so that's why to have my playmates up here, you know, it would be great to have Tony up here. I don't want him, you know, on the East Coast or somewhere down south where there's the potential for the earth shifting. And so we're planning the parties up here and seeing how things all go weather-wise, that we will be going and covering everything from basically Saskatoon, Regina, Calgary, Medicine Hat, all the way to Vancouver and Vancouver Island within the first little bit there, right around the shift. So that's where we're shifting to. And also going into a place where we went through a huge transition on hertz-wise. We're not at 7.83 anymore. We're now over 21 hertz right now. That's a huge shift, shifting into the fifth dimension.
So you're saying so you're saying the planet is not 7 anymore. It's gone up to 21, and this is scientific fact.
This is a known hertz data. I don't use the word factum. I speak in law. Factum means it appears as. It's why they legalese courts use it in the courts all the time. It's actually known data. That's in truth. And so when you're looking at that, I've been watching the graphs in the last week. So I do really encourage people to do their own information because we do. I sat with Patty in real time watching what's going on in NASA compared to what the feed line is being given to the lower information realms they call the public. And I'm not in the public or the private jurisdiction. I'm in a different one in the, they call the first class of first premier jurisdiction. I'm outside the jurisdiction of the corpus juris secundum or everyone's limited information. So this is why we do have access to stuff. And we own nothing, but we have access technology to everything. So this is really great, and it's about getting the information out, just like you and Stephen are doing at Open Your Mind Radio, and not only the listeners in, you know, as you call Ireland, but, you know, internationally. Yeah. So I really do encourage people to look at that and go to my website, go to Karen MacDonald, go to Karen Ann MacDonald. I've got 2 particular ones that hold over probably close to about 10,000 people right now. And I disseminate things very quickly to people, let's say like David Avocado Wolf, because I can put something on David's thing, which is connected to David Wilcock and Nassim Harriman up here and all those guys out on journey and out on tour trying to get the information out very, very quickly. So I can put it out and get it out to 250,000 people within an hour. I post on David Wolf.
It is very,
we are all moving collectively to help people in the best way that we can.
The best, to move forward. Well, I was listening to an interview by Gordon James Gananotto, and Gordon James did say that in the next 3 months, he said, we'll be in a different, the world will be much different in 3 months' time. Tony, do you kind of agree with that, with everything that's going on? Do you believe that the energy or this wave X that's supposed to be coming in is going to activate this dormant DNA that we have in us?
Well, I very definitely think that this is graduation time, and that those people who develop the ability to move their frequency into a dimension that allows them to move out of third density and into fourth density will experience a dimensional shift or a density shift. So, absolutely. As far as the time frame goes, you know, I don't know, and it really doesn't matter if you take the responsibility to monitor and modulate your own frequency seriously. It's a moment-to-moment thing. There is no moment when it's okay to be lax and allow yourself to entertain thoughts that are below the frequency that you want to experience. So it's just like television. Reality is just like television. If you want the programming on channel 3, you've got to you've got to learn the technology to attune the television to channel 3. And if you want to experience a higher dimensional reality where, peace and love prevail and all of the shenanigans that's going on the planet no longer are present and the common experience, then you've got to keep yourself in the frequency where that desired reality exists. Because, the third cosmic law is you can only experience the reality you're the vibration of. So while I think it's important, as Karen says, to be aware of what's going on, rather than use that as a reason to move into fear or paralysis, use it as a motivator to start really being present in your experience. And anytime you're experiencing something you don't prefer, again, what am I thinking right now?
Right.
Take responsibility for how you're using your own mind.
Okay, well, I'll tell you what, there are people out there who will probably be listening to the show, and I'll just put this over to Karen, and might think this is a bit kind of new age woo-woo stuff that is a bit nutty. I mean, it's... For them to, I always say to people that, look, we're all on a path of knowledge, and maybe it's just not their time to get this information, but even at that time, if they turn around and go, well, I think it's all woo-woo stuff, I think that's a little bit kind of being naive. Again, they're giving their opinion on something that they probably don't know a lot about. And so instead of saying, well, I don't understand it, I'm not really getting it, but at the same time, I'm going to still respect their opinion, because maybe they're, 2, 3, 4 years down the path of knowledge that I haven't really got. We've come across, myself and Steve, I've come across information that from years ago, that it's only came into our space now that we've realised. Now, we were told about it 2 or 3 years ago, but it didn't kind of register with us. But all of a sudden, a bit like the Pain Genie stuff, but all of a sudden, now was the right time for the information to mean something, and we got into it, and we start getting, understanding it. So I think there are people out there that might not be ready for this kind of information. They're just not down that road yet. But at the same time, I still think they should question their own knowledge of the subject and go, okay, well, how much do I really know about this to make an actual comment? Because to slag something off or to have a go at it without actually knowing a lot about it is quite ignorant anyway. But so what would your take would be on that, Karen? What would you say about that for the people who think that it's a bit kind of new agey?
Well, I think, if we start going, if it's applicable to every age, is it new, is it old? If you're in the present, it's all ages. Or it's timeless, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Truth is truth. And it's the same thing whether I'm living in natural law, or atoning, I'm part of the time. We're time walkers, really. And we're of time, we're not of light. The whole thing is this, this or this, and people are at different levels of information, but this is the age of enlightenment. It's the age of information, and there's no reason why people are not accessing that, because they're blocked. And so if we look at the time, or look at your chakras, or look at, getting your brain reactivated or your DNA reactivated, that means there's a block in the individual. And so that's where really, when you're talking about quantum medicine and pain genies, that's why we do biofeedback. Right now, this is the time people to be doing cleansing and enemas and getting alkaline, and no longer are those, let's say, lab values or whatever that we used to know that are no longer, applicable. We're in a whole different set of rules here. And this is where people learn to co-create. So this is why it's a great thing. I'm, planning how many garden parties I can do, and see how many friends I get to visit in the next little thing, because those people are ready for their information. What we were talking about maybe a decade ago or 20 years ago, they weren't ready for, but they sure are now. They're starting to use oils. They're starting to use things to open up their minds. They're starting to eat better. But we're seeing that polarity almost in a way. We're seeing the most exciting and best of the best, and some of the worst of the worst. And so from a time thing of pole migration, it doesn't matter. People aren't aware that there are star nations here People can go to Zeta Talks. They can go to all sorts of things that we have available to us. And so that's why, we call it the bear. It's going to be the teddy bear picnic up here. I think I'll have a new theme song. Not at all, but a new tone for that, right?
Okay.
And so, that's what we're doing up here. We're collecting people that are the vibe of the tribe.
Yeah.
And it's only meant for our vibe of the tribe.
Yeah.
If it doesn't resonate, you're going to be somewhere else at your other reunion.
I totally agree. This is what I was saying about just hooking up with people who vibrate on the frequency that you're on. Because when when you do sit down and you're talking to people who are open-minded, and even if they're not on the same page with some information, they still understand that, well, okay, I didn't know about that, but I'm going to keep an open mind. And they're the people you want to be hooking up with, as you're saying. Now, I'll just pass over to Tony with that question as well. We have a question in as well. We have to watch the time. But, Tony, for the people, from your perspective, and the people who think this is all kind of woo-woo, new age, what do you think? What's your approach to the people like that?
Well, I think all knowledge is available to everyone. All you have to do is develop the ability to ask clear, concise, direct questions. I remember when I was walking around back in my early years, I was asking, where are we from? Why are we here? Where are we going? What's this all about anyway? And I didn't seem to be getting any answers. And eventually I realized I'm asking too big a question. There were like billions of people on the planet, so if I ask where are we from, I get billions of answers. And that sounds like white noise. It's when I started asking, where am I from? Why am I here? What am I here to do? Where am I going? What's this all about for me anyway? Then I started getting answers. So it's all about asking the right questions. And if you're getting information and it gets your attention, ask yourself, is this information useful for me? If the answer is yes, okay, how can I use this information? What does it allow me to think that I wasn't thinking? What does it encourage me to do that I wasn't doing? What does it encourage me to stop doing that I am doing? Start asking very specific questions. And I always recommend whenever anybody's feeling uncomfortable, don't ask a why question, because that will just give you an answer in the same frequency that you're already uncomfortable with. Ask what and how questions. What's going on? How does it serve me exactly the way it is?
Okay. Right, we have a question then, Steve.
Yeah, I have a question, or a comment on a question. I'll go with the comment first. Tony, when you done the healing session with us there last week, Chris just sent in a message this evening when he heard you back on. He wanted to say thank you for that last week. It worked on him, he said, and it made a noticeable difference. So that's a thank you from Chris. And we'll go with the question. The question, this is from Karen, and I'll throw it over to both of you. Maybe we'll go with Tony first because you're there on the mic. Can you ask Karen and Tony about blessing water, the water in our organs, the water in the oceans, and all the water in terms of healing and Fukushima?
Yeah, the most powerful force on the planet is your personal will. And the most powerful instrument that you could be using to affect the kind of change you want to see in the world that you're experiencing is your mind. So set your intention, create your vision, and then project that vision out into the collective consciousness. That's the most powerful thing that each of us can do to shift the reality in the direction that we want to see it go.
And same question for Karen?
I think what's going to be really interesting is that I do water blessings all the time, and I'd like to actually just take maybe 30 seconds. Similar to Tony, I do remote healing and stuff as well. I'd like everyone, if they would, please go get a glass of water and have something in front of them just for right now, and have a sip of it. And then what I'd like to do is just a quick blessing, and we'll do it as well, very much like a healing as well for the group and for those when it's archived. So if you could just bear with me. It's magnetically coming. We're coming back into our divine inner alchemical holy communions. We're coming into community. It's between you and your beloved. Mine's on his way here, so let's get ourselves together in peace here for just a minute. So if you just bear with me, I'd just like to take a minute, just bless, do a clearing for everyone.
Excellent. Let's bless that water.
Bless the water bless the planet, bless the universe, bless yourself, get to the spring waters. I'm drinking only the best spring water here off my lands here. We have many springs. And so that's the best that we can do. It changes the intent, but get to where you are. Tony's coming to where the best ones are. I'm also a clan mother holding with authority this land and this territory. And that's with the magnetic pole shift. He's shifting to me also from one end to the other. So it's about coming back into peace and to balance. This is a time of being with your beloved. And that's where we should all be on the 23rd. That whole time frame is about us being with the people that we really are coming back to, being with our co-creators, our beloved. And I want to thank him for coming and for you facilitating this so that we could share our love with the entire planet and the universe and the cosmos. And we'll be beaming to you somewhere, I'm sure, from somewhere on the 23rd.
Well,
is that not correct, Tony?
Absolutely.
Well, I'm looking forward to, what is hopefully if it's wave X or planet X or the energies hitting the planet. I mean, I think we all know that enough is enough. We've all had enough of this system. We've all had enough of what's going on. I was actually watching the movie yesterday, Insurgents, and I don't want to spoil it, but basically the idea behind it all, the movie, is that it was an experiment. Okay? So, and I found it quite interesting because, well, I won't spoil it for people. Just go and watch the movie Insurgents. But it was an experiment, and it's like they graduated, and that was it. And so maybe in September, I don't know, maybe we will hit graduation. Could that be a possibility? That's it? Is it game over in September, or will life still carry on? I mean, my guess is as good as yours, I suppose.
Well, one thing you need to keep in mind is that you're only going to experience the reality you're the vibration of. So that if you're of the mindset that nothing's really going to happen on the 23rd, you're right. Nothing's going to happen on the 23rd that you're aware of. That doesn't mean that something profound hasn't happened for the people that are moving with the frequency that's being projected on the planet at this time.
Okay. So we have to work on that. Well, guys, listen, we've reached that time, and we've one quick question we can throw in.
Yeah, this is just one quick question from me, for both of you. I listened to an interview about a couple of months ago with Keisha Crowther, little grandmother as she's known.
Right.
I'm guessing you're familiar with her, but she speaks of when we have intentions, if we want to amplify those intentions, especially around water, she said if we have some crystals, we can concentrate on the crystals, put our love and positive intentions into the crystals, and put the crystals into the water. And she said that's in her opinion, that's very beneficial for healing the planet.
Absolutely. But keep in mind, crystals and everything else, any tool that you can imagine will help to amplify and focus your intention and magnify the effect you're having is useful. Because the most powerful thing that you have is the power to choose what you believe. So if you believe a tool is useful, it is.
One of the things I just quickly like to address on that is that if people, that's the idea of using crystalline water, which is basically using a Himalayan salt or some sort of a natural Soleil. So if you look up Soleil, S-O-L, that's what you're doing, is crystallizing because you're missing it. I do know that she's not part of the Okanagan or whatever, or recognized as a clan mother, by the way, because I'm out of those areas. So, but what I do want to say is that contravenes all the original, covenants and peace treaties that we put forth, is to not to mine the planet. So I've had enough of the clear cutting and using all these crystals in that particular form. And so we need to be crystallized and say that's our DNA, rather than using external things. That's why people with arthritis will go for copper to try and balance their system, because they're not absorbing it inside. The only thing that would be acceptable to me is to be doing some Soleil or taking the water, and it only releases in the universal solvent. So if you look up Dr. Barbara Handel, salt and water, that's the divine alchemical marriage. That's like the sperm and the egg, and that's the primordial force that comes back to cosmic divine alchemical marriages.
Excellent.
So,
sorry, I'm just watching the time. We're going to have to finish up there, Karen. But again, I've just had deja vu, actually. I'll tell you later. Well, Karen,
You already have.
Karen and Tony, thanks for the last minute request for you to come on the show for doing a kind of a quick part 2. We will do another full show, and I think what we should do is aim to do it in October. And then we'll get an update on what you feel happened, or if anything did happen, or what went on, or what's going on, if we're still here and we're not hit by an asteroid or something like that. But again, thanks for coming on. And if you want to, I'm going to pass you over to Steve. Steve, again, is quickly going to get your details, so we put it out there for people, and so you know where to find you. Steve.
Yes, I want to echo Alan's sentiments. Great information again, and also thanks for coming on, like lastminute.com. It really is appreciated. But we'll give it to you first, Karen. Will we give it? Yes, we will, because we're like that. We go with the ladies first, and no disrespect to Tony. But Karen, can you give us your contact details there, and we get them up on the chat room for all concerned?
Absolutely. I'd be more than happy to provide that and to share that. So I really want to thank you, and again, Open Your Mind Radio and Ireland and all my original Anglo and Angels. And let the best times, the most exciting times roll, right?
Yeah, cool.
Absolutely.
Seldom job.
Right, Tony. Tony.
Yes, I can be reached on Facebook. That's Tony Minervino on Facebook. On Skype, I'm DrTonyMinervino, Dr. Tony Minervino, all one word. And my website is thehealingbusiness.com. And the best way to reach me is either on Skype or Facebook. If you're not connecting me with as a friend, I rarely take a look at those other messages. So just post on my wall. Anyone's allowed to post a question or a request for communication on my wall.
Brilliant stuff. All right, Tony. Tony and Karen, again, thanks a lot for as Steve said, lastminute.com coming on the show. Much appreciated. We will do another one. We'll pencil in another one for October, because it's all past the September time, and we'll just see what happens after that. For now, just stay with us there for a minute. We're going to go to a quick musical break, and we'll be back after this.
This is Open Your Mind Radio on OYMradio.com, UnitedWeStrike.com, and PeoplesInternetRadio.com.
Yes, that was a song about our internet connection here at OYM. Solid as a rock. Yes, just thought I'd mention it. Anyway, great information there from Karen and Tony. Again, as I mentioned on the chat room there, they were kind of back by popular demand, because we got some great feedback during the week. So just before we got Tony, or not Tony, Scott on this evening, Alan just kind of tic-tac with them, and they agreed to come on for a quick one.
Exactly. So we're going to get them on at the end of October, and we'll talk to them about September and October and what happened there. So we'll do that again. Right, now, we said we'd do Alan and Steve's week at the end of the show. Just a few things to go through. How's your week, Steve?
Great. How's yours?
Very quick.
No, good week actually. Positive week. I've just got a teddy bear from Karen. I hope she's listening. Thanks, Karen. I'm guessing it's from me. I don't know. Should have sent us a teddy bear. No, my week's been good. I just made a few notes there. There was, when we spoke of chemtrails earlier with Scott, it just reminded me, we did actually, my wife was talking to one of our neighbours, and my wife has had conversations with this neighbour. Yeah, that's I don't know where that came from. Previously, and she spoke about chemtrails. And this neighbour sniggered and kind of laughed. And again, my wife just said, "Well, do you know what? How much research have you done? You know?" And she said, "Because my husband's done a bit, and I believe it to be true." So a woman was away, and she came back from her holidays, and she said to my wife there a couple of days back, "Oh yeah, I've got a few pictures from the holidays you might be interested in." As she said, you know, kind of tongue in cheek, laughing. What? Says my missus. Well, what do you call them? Chemtrails. So I says, what did you say? She said, I just kind of said, "Oh yeah, that's nice," and walked away.
Yeah.
So I said, fair play to you. What else? The flat earth thing I was just discussing. Actually, my wife, who's not listening this evening, so I could say what I like actually, but I won't. We had a discussion during the week in relation to flat earth, and she said, "Now, do you really believe it's flat?" And I said, "I don't know. It's up there with, you know, a lot of other things that I just don't know about. So they go into the box in my mind with a question mark. And so my daughter overheard the conversation, and she came in. She's 14 years of age, and she wanted to know, hello, flat earth, what are you talking about? So I just mentioned some of the things that I've kind of learned on my travels. I didn't kind of go too deep, just very, very quickly. And I said, you know what, go up when you're finished dinner, pop up to your laptop, type in Mark Sargent Flat Earth Clues, and you get an education. There's 10 videos. So I spoke to her maybe 2 days later, and I asked her, well, how'd you get on with those videos? Do you want to kick it about? And she said, I watched the first 2 videos, she said, and by the end of the second one, I couldn't go any further. They were using big words that I didn't understand. So I came to the realization that the school she's going to is not paying off, because the words weren't that bloody big. But anyway, maybe I'd have to watch it with her again myself, and maybe go through the motions of tell her exactly what Mark Sargent is talking about. But yeah, so that was kind of pretty much in a nutshell. Watching some videos as well during the week, and we spoke before that plane crash as well. I've seen that, and that was horrific. So, and then we were talking about the light beams. Alan spoke with the light beams with Karen. Yeah, I've seen some of the pictures. Karen, I tell you, if you can get her on Facebook, befriend her, because she does have some absolutely fantastic information. I don't know, as Alan said, I don't know where she gets the time to be posting up all this information. She must live on Facebook.
Yeah, I think she does.
Yeah, but again, she's a woman. Anyway, just quick, anyone who has a pen in their hand, if you don't get one, write down this, Mark Gungor, Gungor, A Tale of Two Brains. Check that out with either on your own or with your spouse. I just love this guy. I think he's fantastic. He's not bashing you with a Bible, but he's got some great information, and there we go. There's my week in a nutshell. How's yours?
Right, okay, very quickly, because we're going to run out of time. We want to start promoting people who have either a community set up with community gardens growing their own, or people who are growing their own. And we want to start linking these people up, either not just nationwide, but across the world. Because Mother Earth Gaia is being poisoned, and anybody who's actually grown their own and doing a great job of doing it, we want to start hooking these communities together, because if anything does happen, to damage the planet, or the shops stop stocking food, we need to know where to get it and how to barter and how to trade. So if you do know people nationally or internationally who's doing this, please get in contact with us. Again, thanks for the links that you're sending in. Anyway, it was they're very interesting, and we're working on them at the moment. The other thing that was on Jordan Wick, I don't know whether you've seen it, Steve. I was kind of flicking around because it's TV, nothing's on. But there was a BBC programme called Parking Mad, and it was about unpaid parking tickets. And it was in the town of Selby in the UK, and the police and the debt collectors were using licence plate recognition to catch drivers and to hold them to ransom or take the car off them if they didn't make a payment. I mean, talk about at least Dick Turpin wore a mask, and I couldn't believe that these people were there, again, ignorance of the law, and agreeing to it. And even the debt collectors going up and opening up the guy's boot, seeing what he could take out to the value of the money.
You serious?
Yeah, unbelievable. I was fuming. I was going mad when I was seeing it. And I'm thinking, this is how bad it's getting. The police are stopping people on the road with, license plate recognition, and it's fleecing them. And I'm going, you're not getting your car. I mean, forget about the treaty. I mean, the Treaty of Rome. I mean, the law is there to saying if the debt is not to the value of the vehicle, well, they can't take it. But they were just blatantly ignoring it and using the police to haul them in. It was just complete madness.
But now, again, I didn't see this information, but would it be a simple case of when you are stopped and they try to engage with you, that you just don't engage and you just keep asking them, am I being detained or am I free to go? Yeah,
well, the debt collectors, you just even don't talk to them. I mean, who are they? And then
don't recognise them.
They'll deal with the police. I don't consent. Sorry, I don't consent. Now, next week, Steve is going to go solo. Steve is going to we're going to do the pre-recorded Mark Impey, spiritual medium. Probably we'll do the pre-recorded when Mark comes over, and then that will be played on the Sunday, and Steve's going to be going all solo with OYM next week, because I'll be bringing Mark up to the centre, so he's going to be on platform. So I suppose you'll be either tuning in to listen to Mark on Sunday, or for the people in the locality, they'll be able to drive up to Oldcastle and watch Mark on platform. And obviously, make up your own mind on what you believe and what you don't believe. We're not saying you have to believe a certain way. Just make up your own mind and see what you think yourself. So for myself, anyway. Thanks for everybody tuning in, and thanks again for the people that we mentioned at the start of the show. You know who you are. Thanks a lot. And so this is Alan James signing off. Have a good week. Have a safe week. If you have any news, let us know. Take care. Bye bye.
Yeah, and from myself, Stephen George, don't forget we are on Facebook as well. As I mentioned, if you have anything of interest, if you're on that anti-social media, stick it on there. We'll check it out. Chris wants to organise the Christmas show already. He said a pre-record, just in case we're not all here in December. Yeah, we'll organise that, a pre-record. We get the pub crawl off the ground first, and there is talk that everyone who is on the chat room, well, this is just on the OYM chat, that they're all going to ring in for a Christmas show and give a couple of minutes as who they are and when they woke up. So yeah, keep that in the back of your mind. That wouldn't be a bad idea if everyone was to even just ring in on the evening, or contact us beforehand, and we could just do a quick couple of minutes, with some people. Maybe put a collage together of the different people and how you woke up and what part OYM plays in your life. Obviously a big part. Anyway, go on, stay tuned to People's Internet Radio. Vin is up next. He's all on his lonesome tonight, so stay tuned. Keep him company, and we'll do it all again next week. Take care. Bye-bye.